All right. Well, it's really a pleasure to be here. I've been here about 4 months. My wife and I came up on August 9th, the first day you could actually come into Canada from the US as a visitor. And we've just had a wonderful time. I owe a lot to Claire. Milland has been fabulous. And then without Bonnie, I wouldn't be standing here. She does all the background work. I have an office. IRES has been wonderful, and I've had support from Peter Wall, and I want to thank them, the Peter Wall Institute. So I do a lot of work with farming systems, sustainability, and so that's what the topic is today. So we're on the same page. Oh, huh. How about now? That's what I was on, desktop 1. And that shows here. Yeah, I've never had that problem. Go to share again. Maybe it's not whiteboard. Yeah, try, let's see, or. Okay. Oh, Hannah saved me.
It's in PowerPoint actually.
Oh, so that's the one we want.
Okay. So go to PowerPoint. Go to your presentation.
System preferences. This one here, PowerPoint.
Go to your show, like your PowerPoint in here. Okay, click there.
I gotta get rid of this. System preferences.
Just cancel all that.
Great.
So exciting to come to the rescue. Okay, so go to slideshow.
Yep. Play from start.
No. Setup show. And then second one, browse by an individual. Okay. So now if you push play show.
Actually show my slides.
Yeah, like show your slides.
Okay, so that would be right here. Yep, there.
And then if you want to go to Zoom.
Shoot, it normally just does that.
Now you go to your Zoom here.
Let's see.
You have PowerPoint.
Yeah, this is PowerPoint. And
now you want to get Zoom in front.
I don't know how to
do it. It's very annoying. I have to get through a lot of these. Now you want to share screen.
Desktop.
PowerPoint. Well, that says unknown. Is this not your computer?
No, it's my computer. And it's I've never had this happen, honestly.
Okay, put your password or put your finger. Okay, now we're gonna let Zoom do something. You must have, did you update Zoom? Zoom updated.
It's updated as of yesterday.
Right, and this is why. That's why.
Oh, because you guys aren't updated? Or
no,
what?
but like I also updated Zoom yesterday, and then I have to like.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah, I just did it yesterday. Sorry. can hear me now? Start video. I did hit start video. Okay. So I'm going to go back. I just realized people could not hear me. I assume you can now. I'm going to give some background on conventional and alternative farming systems. It's more than just conventional and organic. I'm going to talk about, we do know some sustainable farming practices. In fact, we know quite a bit. There are some systems more sustainable than others. I'll give a little bit of research on that. And if we know that, then you might think, well, why are we so far from reaching our goal of agricultural sustainability and the obstacles? The big one is probably policies. Markets is another one. Power of vested interest is another. And then just getting science out to people who grow food and to the community. And then when we just to kind of summarize it, we think, oh, those damn farmers, it's their fault. No, it's not. Half of the game is with consumers. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Consumers have equal responsibility. All right. I have no control over advancing this. Oh. Okay. So this is obvious. Conventional systems are chemical intensive. This is what people think of, especially consumers, when they think of conventional farming. The big thing is it's not just the chemical intensive use of synthetic chemical fertilizers and pesticides including all the sides, but it's short crop rotation system. That's the big one. Like just some farmers, it's the same crop every year, or maybe it's a 2-year rotation. Those are short rotation. When we think of alternative, all these systems come up, and there are many more than what I'm showing, but these are the ones that a lot of people recognize. Organic is probably the big one. Biodynamic is not, but it's sort of a subset of organic. Integrated systems are basically a blend of organic and conventional. We have mixed crop livestock systems where growers use livestock with their crops. Of course, agroforestry, big in tropics in particular. Conservation ag is gaining a lot of ground. I'll talk a little bit about that. Perennial grain systems, they're still in the works. We have a little bit of that, and that's being worked on by the Land Institute in Salina, Kansas. Wes Jackson and his group, where they're breeding annual grain crops like wheat, sorghum, corn into a perennial state, because they have deep fibrous roots and they can protect the soil and so along. Hot term right now is regenerative ag, and I'll talk some about that. So this is sort of, we all know what organic farming, or if you have an idea what organic farming is, virtually excluding the use of synthetic agrochemicals. They do use some that are certified, and then crop rotating, green manures, compost, etc. You were to say, well, okay, big deal, organic, it's doing pretty well. The land in organic farming has been growing significantly globally. The amount of research money and the number of farmers. And over the years, if you were to say, okay, let's jump back, we have data, pretty good data since 1997 on this. If you were to go back to say 2006 up to 2015, probably 46% of organic foods were US and Canada, and then another 46%, and then the rest of the world. It's changing now. As of 2019, this is the most recent data. The US would be 42%, Canada would add maybe 0.5% onto that, European Union 38, 39%. They're about the same. China's come on board big time, 8.5, and then the rest. So, and you can kind of see the graph shows, land area and basically the size of the organic market. So it's doing well, and it's growing. Integrated hybrid systems to me probably have the most promise because they blend the two systems. I mean, people haven't had, it says videos on. So people have been listening. All right. So integrated farming systems, and they actually for a while had those in Europe. They still have some. It's a blend of both systems where farmers are 70–80% organic. They tweak the system with synthetic fertilizers and pesticides or conventional practices. Big thing about integrated farming is they have to have soil building properties. That's huge. Not integrated pest management. That can be involved in it, but it's building soil. And I just show briefly this very well-known study from Iowa. Iowa is incredible, can be huge conventional state. Corn, soybeans, hogs, corn, soybeans, hogs. 1 to 2 year rotation. And a colleague of mine, Matt Liebman, and his group, they've done this long-term study. Here's 9 years of it, where basically, you know, the productivity and net returns, where you actually lengthen the rotation system to 4 years instead of 2, you do better. And the 3 and 4 year rotations include composted manure, and they reduce the use of fertilizers and pesticides because of the longer rotations and the manure. And these would be considered more integrated systems, and they work. So we have really good data on integrated systems. Mixed farming, it's still pretty big in Europe, definitely in Australia, New Zealand, and in other parts of the world. It's not so big in North America, where you incorporate both the production of crops and livestock on the same farm. It can be grains. You can even do fruits and vegetables. In fact, picture on the lower left is a vineyard. It's in California, 450 acres. Fall after the harvest to whatnot. They also bring a chicken mobile out. So farms in North America have tended to, be specialized, but there are growers that are basically shifting to these integrated systems. Washington State University is in the heart of the Palouse. I'm telling you this because we just did a study with mixed, and we're still doing it. It's in its 11th year with mixed farming, integrated crop livestock systems. So this is where I come from. It's obviously in the summer or late spring, the Palouse. It's all these rolling hills, and the picture on the right shows farmers actually harvest on 45% soil. And the yields of wheat in this area probably are unsurpassing. Farmers there speak in terms of, and we do too, we speak in bushels, 80 to 120 bushels per acre. Kansas, it's a big grain state. Big yields would be 30–40. So it's amazing, but it's also one of the most erodible areas in the United States. So we set up this long-term study on a commercial, about a 500-hectare grain farm. Typical rotation there is 3 year winter wheat, spring wheat, spring pea. We brought in animals where it's winter wheat in a 3 year rotation, spring wheat, and we graze the energy forage with these Dorper sheep. But we also set up, and this covers 5 acres of the 1,300 acre farm. The organic mixed crop livestock, is 3 years in crops and 2 years in basically graze pea forage. And then the organic hay was continuous alfalfa grass, and that was the whole. This is just the first 5 years of data. We're now putting together the 6 through 10 that. But bottom line, it can make money. The hay performed the best financially. Organic alfalfa is like really high value product, so it did really well. It was the most profitable in the organic crop because it had the alfalfa in it. And the mix and the conventional, you can see their profit was negative. Now, The conventional and the mixed would have crop insurance, so that would be a little bit higher. We didn't take into account crop insurance. So farmers in the US for big crops like wheat or soybeans, they have crop insurance, so if their yields are lower, they get crop insurance where that actually covers some of their benefits. So anyway, what it showed is that organic hay and organic cropping systems can do well, and they have better soil quality. Those two systems, especially the organic, it's a soil build. So that's just an example of mixed crop lifestyle. Conservation Ag is being pushed by the Food and Ag Organization, sort of the Ministry of Ag for the world. And it basically combines three practices, and you hear a lot about it. No-till or zero tillage, or at least reduced tillage. Year-round ground cover, hard to do. With crop residues, cover crop. Sounds easy, hard to do. Diverse crop rotations, at least 3 years. Hard to do. The farmers want to get that money crop out as much as possible. And there was a big meta-analysis done by Cow group back in 2014, because people were saying, "Oh, that's me out," and they were even saying no-till is. And what they found out is that, looking at 610 studies globally, that no-till actually had slightly, maybe 4 or 5% lower yield than tilled crops. But when you add in the other two parts of conservation ag, the ground cover and rotation, it did better. So but it's hard for farmers to do that. And some project that conservation agriculture will turn into this kind of regenerative annual cropping, and with the farmers will start using more compost and maybe green manures. And right now we actually we have some farmers that are trying organic conservation ag. And so that leads me to regenerative ag, because it's what you hear on the radio, on TV. It's kind of the hot item. But when I listen to it, I never hear them define it. It's like, well, what is it? There's no universal definition. Well, it promotes soil health by restoring soil carbon. Okay, got it. Practices, they want no-till, but it can be conservation. They promote cover crops and diverse crop rotation. That sounds just like conservation ag, and sometimes reduced or no fertilizer or pesticides. So it's really a lot like conservation ag in my mind. And so I'm saying that because it's gaining popularity anyway in the press. So all that said, so that's kind of the background. So we really know, and farmers know this too. It's not like, oh, scientists know and farmers don't. No, farmers know. They know crop rotation, nitrogen fixing crops, legumes is good. They know that if they use some organic fertilizers mixed in with their inorganic fertilizers, that it improves organic matter, it can be good. Targeting amendments for specific soil chemical conditions like OPH, you bring on line. Conservation till and no-till. But a no-till drill for a big farm could be $300,000-400,000. So, and your neighbors might laugh at you. So, because it's different. Protective soil cover, huge. In fact, that chart on the right shows you that just with 30% ground cover, that's the x-axis, you save 50% of your potential soil, 30%. So our USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, they define the farmers in conservation tillage, you have to have at least 30% of the ground covered all the time. That's what it really is. Most people don't know that. That's what it is. And if you do that, then you can get government loans. We know about contour farming, strip farming, windbreaks and terraces, all these things, grass strips, conservation buffers, trees planted on highly eroded farmlands. We do that with the Conservation Reserve Program in the United States. We pay farmers. Huge thing that most people don't think about. And for agriculture to be sustainable, you have to protect farmland. It can't really, and especially your best farmland, which we call prime farmland, they cannot be developed. You've got to save them. They are our most productive soils. And so that's That's actually a sustainable item. I'm very sensitive about. All right, so those are practices, and then we have the systems that I talked about. Organic and conventional are kind of like bookends on a shelf, and you have all these systems that I talked about that are in between. So then you say, well, okay, what the heck? How do I measure it? Well, there are multiple goals of sustainable ag. There are really four main metrics. Most people will say three, but the U.S. National Academy of Sciences defined four because they separated out the quantity and quality of food production. So to be sustainable, if you're a farmer, this is hard as heck to me. Provide abundant, affordable food, keep farming fuel. Enhance the natural resource base and the environment, protecting the environment. So environmental sustainability, financial sustainability. Gotta make money, keep your costs down. Oh, but wait a minute, what's the social stuff? You have to contribute to the well-being of farm workers and rural communities. That's very difficult to do. So those are kind of the four legs of the stool. And then if you do all that just right, you're in the diamond in the middle. So this is just an example of a study that one of my former grad students and I did, where we looked at all the data on conventional and organic systems, and we put it into a flower diagram based on sustainability metrics. And you want a flower to have petals that look like flower. And so, I mean, most ecologists do anyway. So that would be the flower on the right. And organic, it's not perfect, but when we compared basically across about 1,000 studies, as far as balancing the metrics, organic does better. Conventional really does well with yield, does fine with nutritional quality and total cost, but in the other areas it tends to fall short. So this is just an example. Naveen Raman and one of his former postdocs, Seifert, they did a similar study, and our results are generally in the same ballpark. So they have a similar study in science. This just came out a few months ago in One Earth. It's a Cell Press publication where, you can actually measure agricultural sustainability at the country level. So they did it for all countries. It's big, and it's a start in the world. And they would, these are all the metrics they use: gender gap, land right, greenhouse gas emissions, soil erosion, trade openness, and they put them into the normal three areas: economic, social, environmental. Production is not separated out. They have this matrix. Each country can evaluate itself. You can alter it. And no country was green is good in their map. Not necessarily here. The color scheme here is a little bit different. But you want, if you're doing really good sustainability practices, the country has to be green. In the middle is kind of orange and yellow, and then red at the bottom. And no country was all green. But this was interesting. Two countries had no red: Canada, and the United States, based on their system. But the bottom line is, if you look at this, they got a huge supplemental information section. They've actually, done this globally. So we have these success stories. We know what sustainable practices are. We even know what some more sustainable farming systems are, say. So what's the problem? Well, it's not technical obstacles. It's powerful vested interest to control our food system. That's part of it. So for example, the Midwest, they want to sell. Most farmers are into this market of sowing corn, soybeans. Some of it goes to biofuel, some of it goes to high fructose corn syrup, and then the rest is animal feed. And they're more or less locked into it. The breakaway, that's very difficult. Existing policies in the United States, we have the Farm Bill. We did get rid of crop subsidies, but you still have crop insurance, which is for some of our big crops like wheat, corn, cotton, soybeans. That could be a problem. You're going to have policies and you're going to support farmers do it for environmental reasons. So lack of information and knowledge actually getting to growers. Weak infrastructure in less developed countries where they don't have refrigeration. They can't get their crops to market, selected field. Economic challenges, that's a whole range of stuff. Misperceptions and cultural biases. People who convert to a different system, farmers, their neighbors think it's odd. Where I come from, this no-tiller, he's been no-till for 30 years. He's an incredible farmer. And he shifted 30 years ago, in fact, up until probably about 5 years ago, his neighbors basically laughed at him. They thought he was crazy. That's a lot of social cultural pressure that exists. So this is a nice chart. I won't go through everything, but it just lists, so financial basically is policy, legal basically is the markets, and the knowledge is basically the information to farmers. And you can see the barriers wrapped around, powerful vested interests, misconceptions, infrastructure. Getting through all that, bottom line is if we're going to have policies, if we're going to improve our markets, then we really need to do something. And we're doing some things slowly. I believe we're not doing them fast enough. And so there are some number of scientists who think, hey, look, if we just took into account negative externalities in our farming system and had to have growers pay for any environmental costs or damages that they do, we would be aware of this. And so here's, this study was done for the country of Egypt using a smaller sample size between conventional and organic. A lot of studies now with conventional organic because they're defined systems. It's harder to do it with some of the others. But when you take into account the negative externalities and put those in carbon footprint, pollution of water, erosion, that kind of stuff, then the organic cotton looks a lot better. And so there are studies that do that, and people think, well, if we do that, that would inform policy, and therefore we would make changes. There are other folks that feel, wait a minute, let's not do negative, let's do positive. Let's do positive externalities, which are basically ecosystem services like predatory beetles, wasps that provide biological control, soil organisms providing nutrient cycling, and on and on and on. There are a few studies, probably if there's 2 handfuls, I'd be surprised. And I know 6 or 7. This was done in 2010 by Sandu. He's done a number of these. And they compared the economic value of just 3 ecosystem services across, I think it was 20 grain farms, half organic, half conventional. Looked at soil formation, biological pest control, and mineralization of plant nutrients, all positive things. The organic fields had higher ecosystem services, $232 per hectare per year. The conventional still had some, it was 146, and the big difference was in the biological pest control, not so much in soil. So that's another way. So farmers that do this, whether you're no-till or organic, if you are adding in this ecosystem service, then it's good, and you should get rewarded for that. And even if it's in a subsidy, that would be fine in the sense that you're being rewarded for doing something good, because food and the planet are pretty important. So kind of to summarize, more in developed countries, the crop subsidies and insurance should be replaced. Those incentives should be replaced by environmental incentives. In less developed countries, we really need targeted input subsidies for resource poor farmers and investment in rural industry. That's what's needed. And this is really broad, covering all the ground here. And then some scientists are pushing for using ecosystem services or negative externalities, or even both, if you want to try to do that. And that would drive policy and create more sustainable farming systems. Okay, great. Now, that's really 50%. I'm only going to spend a couple slides on the consumers. We vote with our dollars, and we play a vital role in foods that we choose to eat. And, you know, it is true that if you eat mostly a plant-based diet and reduce consumption, that we're probably better off with plant. And there are a number of studies that have backed that up. Also, we know food waste depends on what you read. It's 25, 30% across the globe, pretty much. Whether developed, less developed country, different reasons why it's that way, but it is that way. So obviously those are targets. And if you look at that bottom figure, it shows what some of those reasons are. You know, so for example, in North America, it would be more waste food once we actually get it for consumption, whereas in less developed countries, it's more with infrastructure and production side. So, and when I say less consumption, I think there was a study that just came out that was in, it might have been in the medical journal Lancet. It was in one of the medical journals, and it was from Johns Hopkins. And this was a study looking at the U.S. people from ages, I think it was 18 to 25. 58% are obese or overweight. You say, well, forget that. I just want to know about adults. Okay, so adults are 20 years and older in the United States. In the United States, 71% of U.S. people, citizens, I hate to say Americans, but Canadians. Yeah, I mean that in a good way. I'm not trying to say you're bad as we are. Okay, so although we have anyway, 71%. And you were to say, well, break that 71, it's probably 38 obese, 33 overweight. And so we can do better, you know, and it's all based on body mass index, you know, whatnot. So we're not the best example. There was another study in a medical journal that by 2030, so 9 years from now, 38% will be 49. And obesity, we just have so much junk food, so in the United States. By the way, you have great restaurants here in Vancouver, but that's a separate issue. I just want to say I come from a smaller town, and my God, the food here is wonderful. A diet plan that came out is very controversial, or I should just say it's controversial. Eat Lancet diet came out a couple years ago. It's incredibly strict, but it's mainly half of it's eating fruits and vegetables. But it's really restrictive on kind of protein. Animal protein is low, dairy is low. And this is just an example, but it can be tailored. It's different for different countries, and they even say this, and there are modifications of it. So, for example, it could be different in China and India than it would be, say, in France and Canada and the United States, just based on what we eat and whatnot. But at least they took a shot. They basically said, we eat this kind of diet. It's better for us and it's better for the planet moving forward, eating some of those environments. So, in conclusion, targeting agricultural sustainability, these are kind of the take-home messages, and I think most of you probably know these already. Reduce food loss, reduce food waste, and reduce food consumption. And that's depends on the country and the individual, what that's going to look like. Shift to healthier, more sustainable diets. Increase food production with conservation practices, and protect natural ecosystems. We don't like to talk about consumption in the United States. We don't like to talk about population, but it would help if the replacement level for earlier rates were eventually 2 point. And I'm just summarizing what all the science shows. Implement policies to help farmers and consumers. And we really need a shotgun approach. It's what we do individually, but believe me, governments need to step up. Private industry needs to step up, so do NGOs. And there are governments that are doing a better job than others. There are private industries that are stepping up. There are NGOs that are doing a good job. And I have friends that could be doing a good job. So it's all those things. So with that, I think I'm almost out of time. I have 2 minutes left. So, but with that, I'll just take questions. Thank you.
There's plenty of time for questions, I think. And our tradition is that we typically start with questions from any of our students. It could be online, but I don't know if I'll be able to see those. Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yep. Oh, yeah. Right.
And also indirect stuff.
So I'll repeat that just so the question was with this diagram that I showed, one of the people in the audience here asked, well, how is it that the pedal for profitability is greater for organic? How is that so? And that's actually a colleague of mine, Dave Crowder, back in 2015, we published a paper in the NAS looking at 40 years of economic data too. And all the studies done globally. Most of the studies done are in North America and Europe, but still there are studies done in Africa and Asia, etc. And what we found is that subsidies were not accounted for in these studies. So that was the second question. Subsidies accounted for. So I answered that. But what we found is when we summarized it, that organic farming, and this was across something like 45 crops, organic was whether you do cost benefit or whether you do just net profits taking into account inflation, was between 20 and 35% more profitable. And the reason is because organic growers get basically get a premium for the food. So, and the costs were exactly the same. All these studies, that didn't surprise me. The costs were the same for the two systems. The difference is labor costs are higher, and chemical costs are higher. The costs are the same. But organic, it's about, it depends on what, there have been a number of, meta-analysis done. Claire's group's done one, and it's anywhere between 9 and 25%. I think that you want to settle on a figure 18%. We found that, and I think Claire found the same figure in our economic study. Well, so you got lower yield. That's only 18% lower when you're getting a 30% price premium. That's the average over 4 years. That surprised us. It did not change. Well, a lot of Europeans would say it's worth it. It's better protecting the environment. Look at the pedal back now. They deserve that. So then, actually, another question is, well, why aren't more people doing it like it was? Because it's hard as hell. First of all, farming is hard as hell. It is. I'm sorry. It is. Bless those farmers, okay? But it is tough. And then, oh, and you can ask Hannah, she grew up on near where I teach at Park. And then to shift and say, oh, by the way, you're going to grow similar crops or maybe some different things. That's new to you. And you don't have the arsenal of synthetic fertilizer, pesticides. So what people normally do is they try it on 5%. And it's easier to do with fruits and vegetables, but it's still tough. So that's why more people don't shift. That simple question. When our study came out, the meta-analysis, I had someone out of the blue, not a scientist, just a consumer, somehow read about it and wrote me, well, why doesn't everybody just convert to organic? It's making more money. I thought that's such a great idea. Just wrote back and said, there are barriers, it's hard. You know, you were to say, why doesn't everybody convert to no-till? It's hard. I'm just buying that expensive drill. It changes your weed regime, your pest regime. It's tough. Oh, but anyway, yeah.
There's another student question.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There are people, okay, the question is, well, we have subsidies. Different countries have different agricultural subsidies, and maybe in the US for a while, it was for particular crops. If farmers grew a certain amount of wheat or corn, usually bigger crops, bigger farms would benefit. Cotton was one, soybeans was another. That they would be subsidized for growing that crop. So if the normal price is $200 and you make a good profit, but that particular year you only made 100, the subsidy would come in and move it up to 200. And I think when people think of subsidies, that's what they think of. I don't think subsidies are bad. That I don't agree with. I don't think it should be, oh, you're growing a crop, please, we're going to subsidize. Subsidize bullshit. But if you're going to do all these environmental things that are benefiting ecosystem services, and to get going, we're going to help you. I think those kinds of subsidies. So those practices that I went through to support farmers to go from a 2-year rotation to a 4-year rotation, because that's tough. They're gonna eat it financially in those first few years. Help them, you know, or if you can help them with green manure crops, cover crops, residue management. That's what I'm talking about. Those are the environmental parameters. Just some examples. It's related to the 2 pages of list of practices. Thank you.
You have a question? Okay, so Hannah and then
Resilience or regenerative ag? Okay. Because I could do both, but regenerative is the buzzword. Yeah, I think that's it. You're making me think. Right. Yeah, thank you. But you saved me on the computer. But anyway, why? So the question is, why has regenerative agriculture become so popular? I think part of it is because it's a new term. Agriculture. And just think about it, regenerative. Interestingly, back in 87, 88, 1987, before most of I think Mellon it was the only one. Oh, really? Claire, I thought you were so young. Anyway, so Bob Rodell of the Rodell Institute, organic, his father G.I. Rodell, he was in his 60s. He gave this talk, and you can see it. And he basically said, a lot of farmers are organics too complicated. We really need to have a more It was like, whoa. And I was in a meeting in 1988, one of the first major sustainable ag. And sustainable ag is kind of done. He shows up, and there are 500 people in the room, mostly scientists, some farmers. A colleague of mine who's a soil microbiologist, very much into alternative ag, says, you know, for years, Bob Rosedale talked about sustainable ag. Organic. He's ahead of all of them. And what does Bob Rodell do? He says, you know, guys, organic's not enough. We need to be into regenerative. It's like, whoa, he's moving the needle again. So it goes back to that, but it didn't catch on as fast. It's caught on more recently in the last 3 years, I think, because of the food movement. Also, again, it's different. It's like, oh, there was I was listening 6 months ago, some talk radio show, and someone, they said, they were asked about good agriculture. What about organic? Oh, organic's not enough. It's got to be regenerative, but they couldn't find it. They're like, okay, what is that? Tell me. And so, and books are being written now, popular books. Hey, farmer so and so in the Midwest, in the Great Plains, Great Plains like South are moving to regenerative because they're longer crop rotation. They're using no-till. It's like conservation ag. They're bringing animals on. They're doing all this stuff, and they're calling themselves regenerative. They're doing that themselves. But the only system I know of, if you want to be certified regenerative, the only one I know of, they're doing this at the Rodale Institute, I believe, and they've had approval, I think, from U.S. Department of Ag. There is the organic regenerative. So it's not just being organic. You've got to be no-till or at least use-till. It's hard to tell. The tillage helps you control weeds. They have a certification. Now, all that said, you saw the Palouse. There are farmers in the Palouse. About 20 years ago, a couple of them said, hey, we're doing this no-till. We want to be rewarded for it. Somehow they started talking to the Food Alliance, which is a third-party certifier in Portland, Oregon. They certify farmers. They have to meet certain environmental sustainability metrics. They grow wheat, not their whole farm. So if they have, say, a 1,000-hectare farm, maybe 100 hectares, 200 hectares, they grow high-protein wheat that is under the conservation ag system, certified through the Food Alliance. Food Alliance and markets it, and it's sold in all the Whole Foods stores. In Portland, it's in our co-op in the town of Washington. And when you buy it, you buy a bag of their flour. It has a number on it. You put it in online. You got to go to the farm. You got to see the farm. It's a great thing, and I support them because you have. So what? They're not organic. They're doing all these practices. They reduce their pesticide and fertilizer, affecting soil. Did I answer your question? So anyway, that's the return. It's just it's popular right now, but the good thing about it is it pushes farmers to do better things. Exactly. The big thing of it is getting carbon back into the soil. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people are looking at, I guess we call it big data. We've now been doing these studies about, 40 years anyway. I mean, in agriculture, where we have pretty good soils data and nitrous oxide emissions, different greenhouse gas emissions, whatever, yield data, profitability. And especially in developed countries, it's better. The developing countries are coming along, and we've had all these studies, and all their data is available, but it's not available. You know, most of the stuff is on journals now. That's why I use it, but like that's good. But you can contact people. Some of the data is listed in their papers anyway, or supporting information, and so and we have a lot of grad students now real into statistics, knowing how to do meta-analyses, and want to look at this and see what's going on globally. The good thing is that we are looking at this to get an idea, okay? But you have to be really careful because every country is different, and everything can be done well at the site specific. So, for example, where I come from, it's pretty hard to grow cover crops. We just don't have permission. It's all dry farm. But someone could just generally say, well, cover crops are good. Well, they are good, but there are other things that we can do. And in some instances, and we have a lot of residue. So it really depends on where you are. And so the data is there. We now have people trained who like to look at data. And so more and more that's coming out. And I like that. You see these studies, okay, well, the planet's headed in this direction. It's kind of, when you look at it, there's that scale of optimism, the other pessimism. I'm right in the middle of realism. And when you look at it, you get pretty negative. I mean, it's I gave a talk a couple months ago on soil degradation. It's like, as I'm reading these articles, man, I was getting beat up. I'm on a soil scientist, and it's just like, holy cow. Oh, then you start looking at climate change, biodiversity, because those are bigger. So there are some places doing some good things that we can mimic. And there are some places what they're doing wouldn't apply to other places. It's not, you have to think site specific. So they're good, the data's there, but really also need to be careful how. Thank you.
Okay, well, let's, I'm sorry, but we have to end now, but anyone who,
You talk.
John's gonna be around in a couple more weeks, and if we come up after and talk to him, if he's got more questions, we can, So I want to thank him again for a great talk and very good discussion. We can talk about this. I have lots of questions, but I held that. Anyway, we could talk about this for a lot longer. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.